about Synergi RX Energy Formula, which contains phytonutrients. That's a word that you're going to want to memorize and learn and talk about. When anyone asks you about what is in this product, you're going to respond by saying it contains phytonutrients. Now, of course, when they ask you that question, and you respond by saying phytonutrients, they're going to ask you, what is a phytonutrient? And these are natural elements that nutritionally support that part of the cell that causes energy, that produces energy, that makes energy, and that would be the mitochondria. And therefore, that's why we use the term phytonutrients. These are nutrients that feed the mitochondria, that part of the cell that creates ATP, or adenosine triphosphate, or what we call cellular energy. Now, interesting that this part of the cell is what's responsible for cellular health, rejuvenation, repair, and longevity. So what we're offering the client is the ability to take nutrients that feed that part of the cell that creates longevity. That's very important. These nutrients, these phytonutrients, are very hard to come by. We can't find them in our traditional American diet. And so this is something that people are going to want to take on a daily basis. But researchers are convinced that as long as the cell's mitochondria remain healthy, then the cell will stay alive regardless of their state. That's important. That means that the mitochondria are the gatekeepers of cell survival. And so we want to feed them well, and we want to feed them on a daily basis, because the longer the mitochondria lasts, the healthier the mitochondria are, the healthier you're going to be. Now, the energy status of the cells, tissues, organs, and the whole body can be defined by the ability to produce and maintain threshold levels of ATP. The American diet is severely deficient in these phytonutrients, and therefore millions of Americans are suffering from what I call cellular energy deficiency, or what we've termed as CED, which I believe is the root cause of many health problems in America today. Now then, as we go through these ingredients, we have 4 phytonutrients in our Synergi RX Energy Formula. The first one is a rice-based glycoproteins. These glycoproteins are made from a proprietary process that takes about 100 pounds of rice to make 1 pound of pure glycoprotein powder. Now then, in order for the mitochondria to make ATP, it needs the right sugars. And when I mean the right sugars, there are wrong sugars and there are right sugars. And it needs amino acids. Now then, when you break these amino acids down, when you make these chains of amino acids smaller and you cut them into smaller strands, these amino acids also have these proper sugars attached to them. And when we make them smaller, when we break them down into smaller components, what happens is we get hydrogen protons accumulating on the ends of these strands of amino acid. I don't want to get too complicated here, but what we're bringing to the cell are these particular sugars, particular amino acids, and a rich source of hydrogen protons. There's very, very few supplements and food sources out there that contain such high level of hydrogen protons as this ingredient in this product. Now, these hydrogen protons, what they do is they collect on the cell surface, and the mitochondria uses those hydrogen protons to make ATP, along with the amino acids and along with the sugars. So we're bringing a super fuel to the cell that the cell's mitochondria can use to make ATP, which is cellular energy. And that way the cell can remain healthy, it can repair, regenerate in half the time, and it can live a long life. So that is something we want to remember, is that the phytonutrients are key to cell survival and longevity, and these glycoproteins from rice in concentrated form make that possible. Now, we took these glycoproteins from rice and we took them into the University of Stevens Point. We were fortunate that one of the owners of iShopToGive.com graduated from this college, went back to his professors, and they agreed to do some research proving that these glycoproteins could do that. And they did a preliminary study which came back proving that these concentrated glycoproteins that are very high in hydrogen protons were able to do just that, increase ATP at the cell level. So again, just a wonderful ingredient made from rice. All blood types can handle rice, and definitely a high concentration of these glycoproteins that have gone through a proprietary process to make that happen. It's just not going out and buying a bag of rice. You're not going to get the same effect at all. What we've done is taken that rice, broken it down, concentrated the protein factors in it and the carbohydrate complex carb fractions in it, and of course breaking that down several times allows these hydrogen protons to form on the ends. And so we're delivering three things to the cell: a high concentration of these hydrogen protons, these amino acids, and these particular sugars, all of which make give the mitochondria the ability to make ATP. Now then, we've included in the formula three other mitonutrients. The first one is water-soluble CoQ10, which is a natural coenzyme. Just think of it as a nutrient that really we don't get a lot of in our diet, and as we age, we actually lose the ability to grab some of this CoQ10 or even make the CoQ10. So supplementing our diet on a daily basis just makes perfect sense. But we have to have CoQ10 in order for the mitochondria to make ATP. And it does that by processing and transforming the food that we eat into ATP. And so this complex process of transforming food into ATP needs these coenzymes, coenzyme Q10, in order for that to happen. The next one is D-ribose. It's a 5-carbon sugar. It's a natural sugar that enhances the making or the synthesis of ATP, meaning that if you don't have the right amount of D-ribose being made in your body, then you cannot make and produce ATP at the cell level. So again, this is something that we need to get on a daily basis, which is again hard to find in our highly processed American diet. And so that is in this product for that purpose. The other thing we have is elemental ATP, which goes right into the blood and increases the extracellular ATP. The first three ingredients help the cell produce ATP within the cell, what we call intracellular ATP, which eventually some of that does leak out into the circulation. But the elemental ATP goes right into the blood circulation and increases the extracellular ATP, which has a whole lot of health benefits associated with it. You have to remember that we have receptor sites on organs and tissues that depend on ATP in order to function properly. An example would be your arteries. Your arterial system has receptor sites on it for ATP. When ATP lands on those receptor sites, it causes the arteries to relax and to dilate, and this allows blood to reach the end tissues more easily, meaning that the nutrients, the oxygen that those end tissues need are there when ATP lands on those receptor sites. And if we can keep that up over a lifetime, you can imagine how healthy we can keep those tissues. So this has a longevity factor for the arterial system, and definitely the tissues that the arteries, especially the smaller arteries, supply with blood. So again, wonderful formula that increases intracellular ATP and extracellular ATP. One of these days we're going to have a blood test that they'll be able to take, and we'll be able to measure ATP levels in the blood and tell you whether or not if you're deficient or not. Just like if you have high cholesterol, low cholesterol, we'll be able to determine your ATP levels hopefully through a simple blood test.